So, is this guy the greatest singer of all time? So, today on Behind the Tracks, we're going to look at somebody that has crossed over so many times R&B, soul, country music, pop, sometimes rock, sometimes rockabilly, sometimes straight ahead Western music, and what he called cheating songs, drinking songs, fighting songs, loving songs, breakup songs. Name it, he'll do it. A man with 160 charting singles in his career. We're going to talk about the Possum in his early years, how he got from the start of his career as pretty well a community singer to Why Baby Why. Now, George Glenn Jones, born Saratoga, Texas, September 31, was an American country musician, singer, and songwriter. He achieved international fame for a long list of records and is well known for his distinctive voice and phrasings. For the last 2 decades of his life, Jones was always referred to as America's country singer and the greatest country singer. His nickname also was a Rolls Royce of country music. 160 chart singles over 58 years from 55 to 2013. And on the international charts, probably another 20 to 40 have charted. His earliest musical influences were Roy Acuff and Bill Monroe. However, the artistry of Hank Williams Sr. and Lefty Frizzell helped to crystallize his vocal style. He served in the United States Marine Corps and was discharged in 1953. In 1959, George recorded White Lightning, written by the Big Bopper a few years before, which launched his career as a singer. Years of drinking compromised his health and led to missing many performances, earning his nickname No Show Jones. Now, when I saw him in Moncton in 1991, he was so stoned on stage he couldn't remember the lyrics. When he died in 2013, it was sober, but it was at age 81 from hypoxic respiratory failure. Now, George was born in Saratoga and was raised with a brother and 5 sisters in Combs-Neal, Texas, in the big thickened region of southeast Texas. His father, George Washington Jones, worked in the shipyard and played harmonica and guitar. His mother, Clara, played piano in the Pentecostal church on Sundays. Yes, George Jones was the son of a Pentecostal piano player for choir. When Jones was born, one of the doctors dropped him and broke his arm. He heard country music from the first time when he was 7, when his parents bought a radio. Jones recalled to Billboard in 2006 that he would lie in bed with his parents on Saturday nights listening to the Grand Ole Opry and would insist that his mother wake him if he fell asleep so he can hear Roy Acuff or the great Bill Monroe. Now, also known as King George and Thumper Jones, in his autobiography, I Live to Tell It All, he recalled that the early death of his sister Ethel worsened his father's drinking problem, which caused him to be physically and emotionally abusive to his wife, George, and his siblings. In his biography, George Jones, The Life and Times of a Honky-Tonk Legend, Bob Allen recalls how George Washington Jones would return home drunk in the middle of the night with his cronies, wake up his terrified son, and demand that he sing for them or face a beating. In a CMT episode of Inside Fame dedicated to Jones's life, country music historian Robert K. Orman said you would think it would make him not a singer because it was so abusively thrust on him. But the opposite happened. He became someone who had to sing to survive. In the same program, Jones admitted that he remained ambivalent and resentful towards his father until the day he died. He observed in his autobiography, the Jones family makeup doesn't set well with liquor. Daddy was an unusual drinker. He drank to excess, but never while working, and he probably was the hardest working man I've ever known. His father bought him his first guitar at age 9, and he learned his first chords and songs at church. Several photographs show a young George busking on the streets of Beaumont. Like I said, I call that a community singer. You would see him on the corner and say, for 5 cents, play me a song. Now, he left home at 16 and went to Jasper, Texas, where he sang and played on the KTXJ radio station with fellow musician Dalton Henderson. He moved to KRIC radio station, and during an afternoon show, there he met his idol, Hank Williams. George recalled, I just stared. He later wrote, I was so much in awe of him. In the 1989 video documentary, Same Old Me, Jones admitted, I couldn't think or eat nothing unless it was Hank Williams, and I couldn't wait for his next record to come out. He had to be really the greatest. He married his first wife, Dorothy Bonvillian, in 1950. They divorced in 1951. Then he enlisted in the United States Marines, and until his discharge in 1953, he was stationed in San Jose, California. Now, Jones' second wife was Shirley Ann Corley, who he wed in '54. His first record, the self-penned "No Money in This Deal," was recorded on January 19th and was released in February on Starday Records. This began Jones' association with producer and mentor H.W. Pappy Daly. The song was cut in the living room of Starday's Records co-founder Jack Starnes, who produced it. Around the same time, Jones also worked at KTRM, now KZZB, in Beaumont. DJ Gordon Baxter told Nick Tosches that Jones had acquired the nickname Possum while working there. During his early recording sessions, Daly admonished Jones for attempting to sound too much like his heroes, like Hank Williams Sr. and Lefty Frizzell. In '96, Jones recalled to NPR that the quality production at Starday was poor. It was a terrible sound. Recorded in a small living room of a house on a highway near Beaumont. You could hear the trucks. We had to stop a lot of times because it wasn't soundproof. It was just 8 crates nailed on the wall, and the big old semi-trucks would go by and make a lot of noise, and we have to start over again. Jones's first hit came with the instant classic "Why Baby Why," "Why Baby Why Baby Why Baby Why Till It Make Me Cry Baby," in '55. And in that year, while touring as a cast member in a Louisiana hayride, Jones met and played shows with Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash. I can imagine them sitting around the table having a drink. In '94, Jones told Nick Tosches that Presley stayed pretty much with his friends around him in the dressing room, but Jones remained a lifelong friend of Johnny Cash and was invited to sing at the Grand Ole Opry in '56. Now, with Presley's explosion in popularity in '56, pressure was put on Jones to cut some rockabilly sides. He reluctantly agreed, but his heart was not into it, and he quickly regretted his decision. He joked later in his autobiography, "When I encountered those records, I used them for frisbees." He told Billboard in 2006, "I was desperate. When you're hungry, a poor man with a house full of kids, you're going to do some things you ordinarily wouldn't do." And I said, "Well, hell, I'll try anything once." I tried Dadgummit and How Come It and Rocket, a bunch of shit. I didn't want my name in a rock and roll thing, so I told him to put Thumper Jones on it. If it did something good, if it didn't, hell, I didn't want to be shamed with it. He unsuccessfully attempted to buy all the masters to keep the cuts from servicing later, which of course they did. Now, when he moved to Mercury in '57, he teamed up with singer Jeanette Hicks, the first of several duet partners we had over the years, and he had another top 10 single with Yearning. Starday Records merged with Mercury that year, and Jones was rated highly in the charts with his debut Mercury release, Don't Stop the Music. Although he was garnering a lot of attention and his singles were making respectable showings on the charts, he was still traveling the blacktop roads in a '40s Packard with his name and phone number on the side, playing the blood bucket circuits of honky-tonks that dotted the rural countrysides. Why was Blood Bucket? If you ever see the Blues Brothers movie, that's what it was like, chicken wire for sure. And in '59, his big year, he had his first #1 in the Billboard country charts with White Lightning, which was a more authentic rock and roll sound than his half-hearted rockabilly hits. Now, Jones has early success as a songwriter, although later on he relied on the best writers in Nashville. He wrote or co-wrote many of the biggest hits during his period, several of which became standards, such as Window Up Above. A lot of people confuse that because Mickey Gilley covered it in '75, but he wrote it. Seasoned by Heart was a hit for Johnny Cash, which was also recorded by Willie Nelson and Jerry Lee Lewis. He also wrote Just One More, which was also recorded by Johnny. Life to Go, a top 5 hit for Stonewall Jackson '59. You Gotta Be My Baby and Don't Stop the Music on his own, and had a hand in writing Color of the Blues, which has been covered by Loretta Lynn and Elvis Costello. Now, Tender Years and Tall, Tall Trees was co-written by Roger Miller, and it was covered, did a good version by Alan Jackson. Jones' most frequent songwriting collaborator was his childhood friend, Darrell Edwards. Now, it got really, really big in '62 when he signed with United Artists, and immediately scored one of the biggest country hits of all time, She Thinks I Still Care. Probably his second best song, but behind He Stopped Loving Her Today. His voice grew deeper during this period, and had been cultivating his own singing style because of that, that twang in his voice. During his stint with United Artists, Jones recorded albums of Hank Williams and Bob Willis songs, and called it an album of duets with Melba Montgomery, including the hit We Must Have Been Out of Our Minds. Jones also was gaining a reputation as a hellraiser. In his Rolling Stone tribute, Merle Haggard recalled, "I met him at the Blackbird Cafe in Bakersfield, California, which was a place to go for country stars in '61. He was already famous for not showing up or showing up drunk, and he showed up drunk. I was on stage, I think I was singing Marty Robbins' Devil Woman, and he kicked the doors of the office open and said, "Who the fuck is that?" It was one of the greatest compliments of my entire life when George Jones said it was his favorite country singer. In 67, I released a ballad called I Threw Away the Rose. He was so impressed, he actually jumped ship and left his tour, rented a Learjet, and came to Amarillo. He told me the low note changed his life. Now, he was also always backed by the Jones Boys on tour, which did rotate over the years, but were very dedicated. Like Buck Jones' Buckaroos and Merle Haggard's Strangers, Jones worked with many talented musicians, including Dan Schaefer, Hank Singer, Brittany Allen, Sonny Curtis, Ken Goodson, Bobby Burkhead, and Steve Hinson. In the 80s and 90s, bass player Ron Gaddis served as the Jones Boys band leader and often sang harmony with Jones in concert. Laurie Morgan, who later married Gaddis, also toured as a backup singer for Jones in the late 70s and early 80s. Johnny Paycheck was the Jones bass player in the 60s before going on to his own stardom in the 1970s. Now, George, at the time, the drinking was getting to him, the touring was getting to him, but he was an international sensation. But the views from his father, and basically he's drinking, George didn't need a reason to drink. He wasn't drinking because of his songs. He had a reason to drink because imagine your father coming home. Like, I'm a journalist. Imagine my father coming home drunk at age 8. Write me a story. Write a story for the friends. Holy shit, man. All I can say, when I went blind because of a diabetic seizure in 2012, I was having a bad time of it in the spring of 2013. Then George died. And that led to my nervous breakdown. Because George is the patron saint of every Canadian over the age of 50 that's ever been an alcoholic, or ever had a woman leave them, or ever left a woman, or ever got to a bar fight, or ever got cheated on, or whatever. He's our man. And yabba dabba doo, the king is gone, and so are you. Like, there's 5 phases of George Jones' career. It's the start of his career, rockabilly, then the number ones, then the drinking, then the drug abuse and everything else in the 70s. He was on a Rodney Prophet show in 1978. He probably weighed no more than 140 pounds. He was fucking dying on stage. And then 2 years later, he got better and better, and he had the confrontation with the cops, and he met his new wife. He's like the 5 phases of his life. I think every individual relates to George Jones because he say, for a man especially, there's 5 phases of your life. Up to age 15, up to the age of 30, 45, 60, and 75, and after that is bonus. And I'm in the 5th phase of my life. I'm almost 60. But ladies and gentlemen, I know this for a fact. God exists because people like Jean Beliveau and George Jones and the Beatles and all these people that gave us pleasure as sports stars, or music stars, or whatever. You listen to a George Jones song, you could hear the honesty in his voice. And I miss him. I never met him. But if I did, I said, "Hey, George." Right on, brother. Right on. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's kind of weird. This is part of it is podcast. My old buddy, the former world flyweight and Canadian Commonwealth and United States champion Scotty Bulldog Olson, was posting some the Chris Stapleton version of Tennessee whiskey. So I'm dedicating this podcast to the Bulldog, because like Bulldog, we've been through the wars, literally and figuratively, and George Jones has been our soundtrack, whether it's the songwriter or the songs he sang, or the people that covered him. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're a George Jones fan, this is for you as well. We miss George an awful lot, especially in New Brunswick, northern New Brunswick. Bartender's Blues was my theme song as a journalist, and, I do miss him. So, ladies and gentlemen, for like what you're doing with, sorry about that, to get emotional, with Behind the Tracks, let us know what you think with a like, comment, and subscribe. If you love the Possum, let us know, and share this, because a lot of people need to be turned on to the Possum in Canada because of this bullshit with the States. We got to take an American singer-songwriter and use those songs and saying, let's make a drunk because tomorrow we might get invaded, or tomorrow might be taken over. Because George always loved Canada. He never said once. He said that in the Rodney Prophet. He said, "I like all my people from Canada. We love them too." Have a good one.